every single person here is so valuable, is what I can feel. And I feel so blessed that we have the opportunity to learn from each other and work with such an amazing and dedicated group of people as individuals and collectively that have gathered here today. We can only grow from here. This is a very strong starting point, and we can grow from it. It's definitely an international community of people who are now synergizing at the level of dialogue, and then at the level of working together to make a difference. And I think we will. So I think that it is a small group of, considering the problem, we are a small group of highly committed, thoughtful individuals, and I think we can change the world.
So I just wanted to say thank you for the invite, and to tell you how honored I am to be able to be a sponge amongst you. And, I think it's our life's journey to understand what I often say, that poverty is the enemy of education, but literacy is the vaccine for poverty. And in this age where we are discussing vaccinations, may we all continue to be passionate about our network and the ability that we have, the power and the authority to come together synergistically to make this happen. I think 50% of success is always believing that the work can be done. And this morning, as I sit here, I am all in, and I just really, really want to thank and kudos to the organizers who have the vision to make this work happen. So thank you all so very much for all that you do.
Anita, I need to head out, but I just wanted to also just say that this is super exciting. And as I mentioned in the chat, I'm more than happy to help promote this event in the US and in a couple of other countries. I've got a fairly large school district and a couple others in mind that would probably love to have their kids learn how to teach kids to read better. I love that idea. And the piece that I would encourage folks to take a look at is the EduProtocol's approach to pedagogy, because one thing I would like to point out is that if we keep teaching using the same methods, but on a larger scale, we're going to continue to get the same weak results. So we need to adjust our pedagogy and see how we can use technology to maximize individual achievement. And with the EduProtocol pedagogical approach, a lot of you have probably seen Rosenstein work. It aligns with that kind of thing where there's small chunks, fast feedback, and scaffolded growth. So I've got to run to another event. I put my email in there. I'd love to connect with all of you. Thank you.
I'd like to say a few things. I watched your presentation, and I just think that we need an alternative. I grew up in apartheid South Africa, and I witnessed the inequalities in our country, and the inequalities are getting worse. And I studied in the United States in State College, and so I went to the Philadelphia School District where I did some work in the 6 districts. And I just think that this I'm really delighted to be here, because the way the world is structured at the moment, and what's really happening in the world is that education has become secondary to money, to politics, and to power. And it has relegated education, and lots of children across the world are suffering. And therefore, I think whilst the literacy focus is the most important focus, and I'm delighted to be involved, and I think your ideas are visionary, I think that this group could also act as a think tank for poverty and respond to poverty across the world. I mean, if we have heard about Chicago and and other places in the United States, in the UK, in Africa, in Mexico, and there is no voice for poor people. And so when I grew up in the apartheid system, and the country became a democracy. And I theorized education over the last many years. And I think that education departments reproduce the status quo. You know, Bowles and Gintis told us in 1976 that schools reproduce the status quo. I think schools do reproduce the status quo, but I think education departments reproduce the status quo. And we have to get involved there as well in terms of the policy development and the policy implementation. I said this when I spoke to you the other day, and I think that we need to respond to poverty in the world. There has to be a voice, because the education narrative is being dominated by people who have vested interest in growing their business and making more money, and at the expense of millions of children across the world. And so, you know, there's a way in which people are silenced, and working class parents don't have a voice in the world because they aren't able to articulate themselves, and they aren't able to contest the power dynamics in virtually every country in the world. And so I just think this forum and this organization has so much of potential, and I'm so delighted to be involved, because I think there's a lot of work for us to do in this time that we have in this universe. Thank you, Sunita.
I'd just like to say, to agree completely with Sigmund, just not what he just said. I think we do need to get the top people to as you say in the book, you know, to get them to start to say, this is what we want. And it's wonderful, so wonderful to read the NEP, the National Education Policy 2020 in India, and to see those key statements about learning that just will open the door to empower and enable teachers and learners and communities. But having said that, I think where that doesn't happen, where the will isn't there, and maybe it's because the money is, you know, reducing the will to change, we have to empower and enable the young people themselves and the teachers to help them, and the middle managers to coach them. And so, you know, looking at my own work, I was really looking at these people to drive the changes within the system. And so it eats away at the system until the system has to change. And there's just, you know, so I just got fed up with waiting for change from the top for so long, that you have to do it from the middle and the bottom and the upper ends of schools and all that sort of thing, you know. So I just really like to say I agree with Sigmund and what he said, and you know, and seeing that middle part of your book, and I got so excited because it just synced with all the things I'd been thinking, and you've actually started to do it, and that's where I'd love to help you with it.
First of all, lovely to be here with everyone, and really inspiring group of people. So it's wonderful to even be part of it. And a couple of quick thoughts. One is that what's the most hopeful thing to me about this gathering and the planning that you have been doing is that I've been, you know, working in this field for more than 30 years, and collaboration is not the rule of the day, generally speaking, and it's not for lack of wanting to collaborate. By and large, I think we all sort of have the death grip on our own steering wheels, and we're all so overwhelmed that it's really challenging to take 10 steps back and hold hands on the right and left. And yet I think if we don't do that, if we don't figure out really broad collaborations, the problems are outpacing us. And I love this conversation. I love this plan because I believe deeply that our future depends on collaborations. And secondly, to agree with the prior comments about needing a voice from multiple audiences, multiple constituencies focused on the lives of kids in poverty, families in poverty. First Book has built a research arm called First Book. We have now a network of 525,000 educators in the lives of kids in poverty across the US and Canada. And our research arm allows us to capture that voice. And we've gotten better and better and better at it over the last 7, 8, 9 years. And so I'm really hopeful that, you know, it allows us to tap in and say, what's going on in the classrooms, what's going on in the preschools, what's going on in the after schools and libraries and healthcare settings and even barber shops, the full breadth of settings. And I'm hopeful that that tool, that infrastructure will be, it's not everything we need to build. It certainly is not everything, but I'm hopeful it will be contributory to the voice that we all need to hear.
Hey, hi everyone. Good to meet all of you, these distinguished personalities. And start from where our founder, one of the biggest philanthropists in the country, Mr. Shiv Nadar, had told us that if you don't solve this literacy problem in the country, you cannot solve other developmental challenges. So from there, we started working on this literacy as a problem, and adult literacy and literacy for children. Now, one very important point I want to make is on numbers, because we are working in a population of 600,000, and what we have found out that in UP, they are in that 600,000 and 100,000 adults. So, and you said that, okay, so the problem is billions large, right? 700 million adult illiterates are there. So now, so as an initiative, one needs to think in what time frame and what how much numbers we would be able to reach. So we should keep a quantitative sort of a North Star. Okay, so hence to keep our focus that, okay, in this amount of time, we have to reach these many illiterate persons, and then try and help them with whatever different methods that we are going to devise. So that one advice I have, and if we are able to make things quantitative as a goal for ourselves, it would help us keep our focus very strict and that. So one point. Thanks a lot.
Morning or afternoon, depending, I guess, where everybody is. I want to start. Well, first, thank you for inviting me to this meeting today. I'm very honored. Maybe I want to start my comment off with something that Robert Thorne said. He said that maybe our push should be that this is to say that this is what we want. And maybe I could take that to the next step and say to the people that we're speaking with, whether it's in government, whether it's in education, whether it's in business, we should say in our mission as we're pushing the different themes across is that this is what our statement should be. This is what you should want. Because and I look at the work of Antonetti and Garver, and they talk about what teachers are doing, and they say that. For people who aren't familiar with their work, they said that in the 17,000 classrooms that they visited, when they talked to the students, about 93% of them knew what they were doing. So in our schools, when we're trying to teach students how to read and teach mathematics and all that, the students could tell you what they're doing. But then when we asked what they were learning, only 33% of the students could actually tell you that. They could articulate that. Then when they were asked why they were learning it, only 9% of the students could actually articulate it. So my thought is this, is that if the students aren't learning it, it's really because we're not teaching it. And probably is the root cause of illiteracy. And maybe we need to change that paradigm somewhat. And we need to explain to everybody what success looks like. And when we were looking through the mapping of what some of the agendas are, I think added to that should be that what would success look like for if we're going to do A, B, and C, if this is our goal, then what would success look like? And I took some notes when Robert was speaking. And I thought, that if we were to eradicate this literacy poverty, what would it mean to you? Well, we know there would be a significant change in the economies of the countries and of the world. We know that. We also know that there would be a change in health, personal health. There'd be changes in growth in mental and emotional stability. There would be a financial reward for people once we eradicate this. So it's not so much what we want to do, but which I think is important. We have to have a vision for what success looks like, but we have to emphasize on everybody that we're asking to either to help, to step in and help, or to back us financially to say that this is more for you than it is for us.
Thank you very much for giving me the honor and pleasure to be part of that very nice panel. And so I just would like perhaps to pursue this, what was just said before by the two previous persons about, the narrative and what could be one of the main goal of such an organization in promoting the end of literacy poverty. It's a very good name, by the way, because it's really poverty in literacy that we care about. So, I mean, the issue with this is that it's not an issue that is at the forefront of the thing that people are discussing. And it's unfortunate. And I think this is where we could perhaps bring something, but then we should try to think collectively as to how to do it efficiently. And what we could bring in is to get some good, statistical data on that, to get some good measure of the issue. Because obviously there is the literacy poverty, which I believe you interpret as basically illiteracy. So that's one aspect of it. Even though we have made, the world has made some progress on that front in the last 60 years, according to some estimate, now we are about at 86% of the world population that is basically literate, or 16%, 14% is totally illiterate. But of course, total illiteracy is one measure of extreme poverty. But of course, there are many people who are perhaps barely literate, but only barely literate, and this is not enough. So I mean, there should be also some measurement of the various ways by which we can be literate poor, as we can say. And we should try to get information on that. And this information is not that easy to obtain. I guess if we, one good endeavor for a group will be to be able to collect that information, let's say, at the country level, at the year level, also trying to measure this by the kind of schooling, the kind of education that we provide, which education method is the most efficient in bringing this literacy in. I guess if we could provide data and be a kind of a waker of the public opinion on this by providing regular data. Some people just mentioned before that we have regular data on global warming, on things like that. We should have very regular data on literacy and all of the measures by which we can measure this phenomenon. I think this could be something to work on. Now the question is how, because we need to have access to data source. Perhaps we could apply to some funding for this. There could be some ways of becoming an observatory of educational success worldwide. And a second thing, and I will stop here, that I think we should also be heavily concerned about. Obviously, there is this global literacy poverty that is important, but there is also this unequal poverty that is also quite important, because we are not on a par on that, and there are many inequalities in educational success, which are quite worrisome at the world level. There is a gender inequality that is quite amazing and is still on a par that should, perhaps we could emphasize this. Also, it's very important, but also you have, various social group inequalities. You have the colleague from South Africa may know about that concerning, for instance, race in South Africa, but similar issue can be observed in the US. in India, we have the issue in caste and things like that. And so all of these inequalities in education also are very important. And I think we should be also advocate of those in this group. And this should also be done through measurement.
Thank you so much for making us part of this amazing initiative. It is really, really inspiring to be part of such discussion and initiative with this esteemed group. I will like to say, like my colleague Vaibhav has already talked a bit about what we are doing. So with our experience of Sakshar Samudaya from HCL Foundation, working in rural pockets of Uttar Pradesh in India, and helping about 90,000 people to become literate, I can, in fact, realize the importance of this whole initiative, and also say that we need to, I can, on the basis of this, I can, of course, hint out few areas, especially, I would like to say that we need to tackle on such huge numbers. I was talking about the initiative in one particular district of state of Uttar Pradesh, one of the states of India. And when we take it at global level, we need to think about huge numbers we are going to tackle. We need to think about diverse factors of disadvantage that we are talking. And probably your study will reveal and throw some more insights on that. And also we need to work on futuristic possible solutions and ideas that can help us. And above and all, of course, we need to work around public and political willingness that of course this campaign or this movement is going to help, and that is what we are targeting. So I am sure that as we move ahead, this idea is really, really visionary. And I'm sure that as we move ahead, we will be able to acknowledge much more, and we will be able to see some movement towards the desirable situation we are looking for. So it is, I'm personally, individually, and of course, at organizational level, I am sure that as we move ahead, we will be able to demystify and confirm with what kind of roles we can be helpful as a group and as part of this group. So much more to come. So these are the few points that came to my mind, trying not to repeat what already has been talked about.
I too am very grateful to be working toward this hopefully world encompassing goal of making 1 billion people literate. I am an education practitioner, so I work daily with students who have dyslexia or other reading disabilities. And I also was a classroom teacher for 32 years. One of the biggest obstacles or challenges we face in the United States is that children are not being taught how to read. We are using programs like balanced literacy and it's a whole language derivative. And kids are being taught strategies like the 3 cueing system that poor readers routinely use. So we have to get a handle on how reading is explicitly taught. And many teachers in the United States do not understand how reading is taught. But we also have to make people aware that there are 5 critical components. This was outlined in the 2000 National Reading Panel. The most recent results from the NAEP show we are lower than ever before with our data as far as proficiency with reading in 4th grade and 8th grade. But we do have, states are starting to pay attention, and we have dyslexia laws. So all kindergarten and 1st graders in certain states like Ohio, where I am, will be screened for reading problems. And so this will give us some data, but we already know what works. So the big challenge here is, why isn't this being implemented? routinely across the United States. So you have to have the decoding and you have to have the language comprehension. So yes, you have to be able to read words on the page. I think someone else brought up, but you also have to have that language comprehension, which is vocabulary fluency and comprehension. So without the decoding, we won't get to language comprehension. So they have to work together. So there's a famous study, this Tumner and Goff replicated it 150 times. The study has been replicated to show that decoding must be taught in every school, and then the language comprehension part of it all. So I'm really interested in the transforming education part. It's what I'm trying to do in the United States to really amplify what works. Data scientists, cognitive scientists, neuroscientists know what works. And there's been a push literacy per my school district directive for the last 7 years of my career. And it completely leaves about 40% of the kids behind. So, and today I teach students from all over the United States who are not learning to read in their public or private schools. So I think how to read and getting down to that nitty gritty is really important. So we can have the ideal, but we have to be very pragmatic as well. Thank you.
I had a couple of ideas. The first one, you know, it's rather lateral, but what I'm thinking is that really once you give someone literacy for the first time, that's really like the beginning of everything they might learn or do. So could there be a way that we could show some of the dramatic things that people do first do once you've given them literacy? I mean, that would be a way of showing that maybe, you know, once you help, let's say, adults with illiteracy, they go off and do something which is very different and maybe which people don't imagine until they see it. So I'm wondering if this is a different way of validating why it's so important. If we could get the, you know, some of the really great actions filmed from the hundreds of thousands of people that are suddenly being put into literacy for the first time. And of course, that has different implications. For example, if, say, a 7-year-old has been behind with literacy but now catches up, what should they do next? Do we have some special ways to help particular groups that you're basically you know, helping in that way? The other thing I was thinking about was, I don't know how many people here know about the Eden Prize in Hong Kong. So far, they haven't really understood the magic and the huge impact that this movement has. So I'm wondering if we can, at some other stage, work out how to get back in touch with them, because demonstrate if probably the biggest change movement for education that's going on anywhere, the Eden Prize doesn't understand the significance of this movement.
Thank you, Sunita, and compliments to you for bringing such an amazing group together and having such a bold vision to end literacy poverty. I obviously, you know, agree with everything and some of the amazing things that the amazing minds on this group have had to say. The thing I wanted to say was maybe bring some new angles to this discussion, and, you know, maybe we can think about it, maybe we would reject it. But my starting point is, I'm ashamed that I live in a world with so many, you know, sort of children and adults who are illiterate. And that's what drives me to, you know, with passion to address this issue. I want to figure out, how do we shame the world leaders who are presiding over such illiteracy in such large numbers and make them feel so ashamed that they do something about it. I think Robert Thron said about how he's given up waiting for the, you know, things to happen on the top and we get on with life. And I think we need to do that, but we also need to change the narrative at some of those higher levels, because this is a complex problem. And I think a couple of our speakers, Mary and Richard, talked about hidden illiteracy, which is that, yeah, you can tick the box and say you can read it, but actually she's not reading anything. It's not making any sense. So there is hidden illiteracy, but there's also a lot of intersectionality to the illiteracy, especially in a country like India. There's intersectionality of illiteracy with gender, illiteracy with race, illiteracy with caste, illiteracy with poverty, illiteracy with disability, illiteracy with tribal languages and people who speak dialects which don't have written words. And there are so many aspects to illiteracy that I feel it's a very complex space. And to address such a complex problem, we need to definitely go out of the box. And I think there are pedagogic challenges, there are education system challenges, and all that needs to be addressed. And I'm thinking we should even go beyond that. We need to figure out, how do we make things like big data work for us? How do we make machine learning work for us? Because only then you can study these intersectionalities. Otherwise, we'll be still doing it the old-fashioned way of spreadsheets and whatever else. So how do we bring tech into our work is a big question for me, and data sciences into our work is a big one for me. The second one is this whole space of nudging, right? The whole, how do we bring behavior change? And, because sometimes it's about changing the knowledge of things, but sometimes it's just about changing the behavior and driving it from that end. And we need to figure out how do we use some of these nudges. And there's some economists in this group. We figure out what are those nudges we can try, and different types of nudges that we work with, and see how maybe it's incentive, maybe it's shaming, maybe it's gaming. It could be anything. And I think we need to think through some of those things. The third is this area, and that's one thing I have realized out of my work in the education space. If there is political will, anything can be done. That's absolutely simple and straight as that. So we have to figure out, how do we make this part of the political narrative? The day people will win elections on literacy, your problem will be sorted. We will not need to do any work, because they will figure out how to do that, because they need to win their elections, and they have all the ability to make it happen. And when I say they, I obviously mean mainline politics and politicians and stuff like that. I work in a lot of areas of illiteracy. So I am the head of an organization, besides my role at the Indian School of Development Management, that works with out-of-school girl children. So there are, as probably a lot of you know, there are at least 10 to 12 million children in this country who don't even get to go to school. And there are a lot of people who are effectively out of school, which means they go to school, but there isn't even a teacher in that school, or they go to school and all they do is have a midday meal and go back home. So we need to unearth all this illiteracy. There is a lot of illiteracy. So I really would love to see a whole segmentation and heat map of where is this illiteracy? How do we dig it out? How do we bring it to the fore? And then figure out how do we prioritize and work on different segments of areas to work. But I was coming back to my own work. So I'm involved with an organization that's working with 150,000 girls who are out of school across 2,000 villages in this country. I'd love to bring this work out there, and not just to the girls, because we're already working with them, but their own communities and extended communities. And mind you, these are people who live not even in villages. These are people who live in hamlets. I mean, there are girls who will have one dress and will have to stay inside while that dress is washed and dries up so she can wear that dress again, right? That's the kind of poverty. So we need to figure out how do we work in those places. I am also associated with Learning Language Foundation, which is working on some of these foundational literacy numeracy thing, which has become very big in India. So there is some political will with the new education policy. So we need to see how we can write some of these collaborations across organizations, and I'm happy to work with you on how to drive those collaborations. And really, sort of where I can come in is, one is, of course, to figure out who can I bring in to do some of these work. And the second is really on the ground level. I mean, how do we bring collaborations? For example, during COVID, there is one of the collectives I'm associated with called the RCRC that brought together 140 not-for-profits together to respond to COVID. We need to figure out how, and in India, 40% of the NGOs are in the education space. So we need to figure out how do we get 1,000, if not 10,000 of these NGOs to collaborate and have this single thing of, how do we drive education, literacy, poverty out of the world. But yeah, this is amazing, and I'm very happy. I know I'm very stretched in the kind of things I'm involved with, but this is something I will make time for, and really appreciate your making this happen, Sunita.
I feel amazingly privileged and honored. So that is why I will make it very, very short. So amazing initiative, compliments, like everybody else has said. I will have I feel honored to be in such great company. I come from a communications background, and I'm very happy to take this concept and idea and narrative through using communication tools and platforms to as many people as possible in India and South Asia. And that's my short point for now. In next meeting, hopefully I'm not at a noisy place and I'll be able to contribute more meaningfully.
Thank you for having us here on this, committee or advisory committee. It's great to team up with all of you on this mission and to create a conversation and alignment across stakeholders. A few things just wanted to park. I would also like to see if we want to consider adding impact investors as a interested audience in our forum, because there are a lot of impact investors apart from the CSR funding agencies who bring innovative capital to the space, and also capital which is a little bit more future focused and allow us to be a little bit more risk taking in terms of the project design and experimentation per se, right? Maybe that would be one suggestion. We are really looking forward to the next few sessions as this goes forward to see how this could be shaped. But coming back to World Reader just 2 minutes so that everybody here has a context. We are a global nonprofit and we believe readers build better worlds. And we focus on nurturing self-motivated readers with comprehension by the grade 5 or basically age 11 or 12 around the world. And we focus on working with children in the most marginalized communities by using the extremely frugal technology which is available. So we make digital books work on phones as cheap as $7, and with data compression and human-centered design of how a semi-literate or a illiterate parent can actually use that tool with their children. Of course, our work is inspired on the work which is done by a lot of other people in the reading space, with physical books and digital books and a lot of other stuff. But our chosen mechanism is to come and argument after the first few physical books somebody could buy have been purchased, and then what happens, right? And that's where we step in. And we believe in providing access to these digital books to the stakeholders around the children. It could be the daycare facilitators, it could be the parents and caregivers at home, as well as teachers who could use it in the primary grade classroom. So we start our work as early as the child can, or the child and the parent can engage, and then try to see them through grade 5 and hopefully become intrinsic readers with comprehension. The role we play in the ecosystem is work with donors who are future focused and have the ability and foresight to bet big on technology for good, to create assets which we then deploy and give it out to a variety of partners who are working with the children on the ground, right? So we do some projects of ours which are showcase projects and research projects, but 90% or more of our impact is actually created by our partner ecosystem who use our technology and assets in their programs. And that's an interesting model which we're trying to do. If we could, let's say there are 300 NGOs trying to do education work, all of them need books. So instead of everybody trying to do that, can we take a step back a little bit and create the assets which could be available for all those nonprofits? And that's the role we like to play. We look forward to this conversation and this forum as we go forward, because like people were saying, instead of every player figuring out the whole 91 puzzles available in the system to solve, if each one of us can take different pieces and solve them well and then integrate and collaborate, I think we can move the needle quite a bit. and if these and we are also starting to see that in the CSR and foundation and donor network, a lot of these people are also demanding from the NGO sector a far more innovative, future-focused approach, which can be done in three different. One, impact is imperative. That's the first thing. It has to be there. Second, can we use technology in some way to scale that? And also, pass on the agency of using technology, not just to the intermediaries like teachers and daycares, but also to the parents, hopefully. And then the third, like somebody was talking about, can we actually see the data? And the purpose of seeing the data is not to critique anything, but data actually tells us a story. It shows what is working, what is not working, and we can use the data as a forensics tool for our program design. And I think World Reader has been in action for the last 10 years. We have over 19 million readers, over 60 plus countries reading on our platform through various partners who are using it. We have good amount of reading data, which we still have to start deciphering. And I think people were talking about AI and machine learning and how we understand data better from learning outcomes point of view. So those are all areas where we would like to partner with anybody in this forum, and as we go forward, others who may join. So thank you for pulling us into this conversation and into this initiative. We look forward to working with you all on this and try a little bit to move the needle.
I should tell you, it was an amazing discussion so far and learned a lot as well from all those who had spoken earlier. And it's really a matter of great honor and excitement to be along with all these thought leaders and educationists. I would at the outset tell that it's a very good vision. And in the brief presentation you had done also, I found that overall activities have been laid down. And what I liked the most was involving youths and school students to take this project forward. And that is one of the best decisions that has been taken. And I feel that this is an area where I may be able to help the project that is connecting to schools, colleges, universities and all, and spread the idea. That is the one thing it struck me. And overall, it's a good idea. And I think as we continue in the subcommittees, discuss more and all, I hope that more ideas will come and we'll see that this project goes into success. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for doing this. I really am honored. I think there's a simple solution to all this, and that we just need to do whatever Sunita tells us to do, and all the problems will be solved. So I started Teachers Without Borders, and just want to say that we would be quite committed, and the interns that are working on this, to work in the area of the teacher voice, teacher momentum. Since teachers are the largest professionally trained group of people in the world, they're like this development army in everybody's backyard. And so I would love to be able to have something where, all those categories that you mentioned, we can add in our personal, work, everybody here, whether we're running a session or not, because we can build that collaborative spirit that was discussed. But between the teacher's voice, the whole notion of teachers as that development army, this in their role in a community as community agents, that's an area that we can absolutely support. And I have to tell everybody that the interns that are working on this love this project, and that youth voice is incredibly powerful.
Thank you, Sunita ji, and everyone else. Honored to be here. So the world leader part, I think Banu articulated nicely. So I'll speak as an individual who is from the last, I think, more than 20 years, believe in the power of reading, and then how can this be done? And also very happy to note that you mentioned about that book, Children of the Revolution, about the learning campaign in Cuba. And because that was one of the book which Professor Krishna Kumar gave us when I was doing my B.Ed, M.Ed and MPhil from Central Institute of Education. So he said, you must go through this book. And I feel that if we have that kind of junoon, that kind of passion, with youth, and if we give them some tools, so and build their capacity, definitely this thing can be achieved, which we are all right now discussing. Beautifully articulated the literacy and poverty correlation, whether poverty should be addressed so that we eradicate literacy, or we should take the route of addressing literacy and the poverty can be eradicated. So that we need to think. I think very critical point our new education policy is making, because I was listening to many good suggestions about the components, whether it should be fluency, comprehension. Our national education policy, out of the 6 components, the very first component is oral reading fluency. And it very clearly says that, okay, other are very important, but if we start from the oral reading fluency, allowing children to use their language in the classrooms or in the community settings, that will lead to learning in a better way. So I think we can use these things which were the national education policy also says. And the final thing is that everybody is now in a recovery mode. So children are recovering, communities are recovering, schools are recovering. It's a great opportunity to use this recovery mode also to ensure better access for all the children, and then eradicate the illiteracy from all the communities. Very happy to join, and as Bhanu said, we'll be very happy to be part of certain specific committees that are relevant as per our skills and focus. So all the best, and look forward to many more conversations here.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Gandhi, for bringing this great group together. I'm Cindy. I am originally from Guyana, and I would just give a little back history about my challenges with literacy. I've had lots of challenge with literacy, where as a child, I really memorized passages as opposed to knowing how to read. And I know someone stated earlier, they're talking about do you really understand literacy, or what are we really teaching the children? And I think that it is really important to really understand what literacy is and how the work that we're doing, like making sure that there is some sort of impact from it. I have a non-for-profit organization, Scoop on the Sisters, and we focus on illiteracy in the underserved communities. And one of our biggest challenge was especially like getting the data. Someone stated earlier the importance of getting the data. And I think since we are stakeholders or NGOs are going around to have solve the global illiteracy work, I think it's important, like we kind of somehow mandate that we need the data. Because like in my country, I was trying to get funding and they needed specifics on the data of the illiteracy rate in Guyana. And the ministry would not give me the information. Of course, there are cases where, they just want to showcase, for the country, like the country is literate and the good of the country, how literate the country is, but not tapped into the underserved communities where that information is really needed to do any work. And I think we need the data to really understand the data and how we can improve the communities. Because without the data, we all can come together and do, tackle different areas in the illiteracy world. But without the data, we can't really measure it to see what progress we're really making. And I think Nicolas stated, it was, but I really agree that when we teach the children and the women how to read, we also need to, it's just not just teaching them to read. We need to think bigger, sustainability, creating jobs for them, and really show we impacted 1 million people. Now we made literate. Where do they go from there? You know what I mean? So we could this project is great. I mean, this initiative is great. So I would think that other components like that, scale it up broader, not just like the making them literate, but where we go from that. So I think that component will be.
I'm super grateful that you're here and we are working on such a meaningful cause with the right heart and the right mind and the right spirit. And that's what counts, really. So thank you. I feel blessed and feel really grateful.